right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our first class in Mending Minds, where we're going to be talking about mindfulness and resiliency. My name is Nick Tennant. I'm an on-site health educator in the Jacksonville Wellness Office, and you're joining this as part of a six-part series where we'll be discussing things that affect our mental health, how we can aspire to make changes in our lives and really alleviate some of that stress that may be caused throughout our lives. So today is just the first part where we'll be going over mindfulness and resiliency, a real broad overview of what mindfulness is, why resiliency matters, and how we can start building those resilient behaviors that we have. So when we look at the program as a whole, you'll see the program outline is, again, it's a six-part series that'll take place each week, so every Thursday at noon. So today, again, mindfulness and resiliency. Next week, we'll talk about what makes us happy. So we may have an idea of, what can probably make us happy, but you'll actually be surprised at some of the research behind happiness, and what we think make us happy actually may not actually do that thing. So what we're also going to look at is the following week, you'll hear from me and we'll talk about the science behind gratitude, how being grateful in your life you can really reap those rewards, and it actually can have effect on our happiness level as well. Then you'll learn about understanding relationships, followed by food, mood, and mental health, which is going to be presented by John Vredenberg, a registered dietitian. And then finally, we'll wrap up the program with me where we'll be talking about developing resiliency and setting some SMART goals for ourselves. So you'll learn a lot of different strategies that you can use to tackle your stress, whether it be mindfulness, helping with us, our happiness level, whether it be gratitude, any of those types of things that we can apply in our lives. So the ultimate goal is going to develop a SMART goal for yourself so you have an action item to take away at the end of this course. Now, I know a lot of you may be joining from Gainesville, Central Florida, other areas. So just a quick overview of the program requirements. So if you joined this class, you probably already completed that pre-survey, hence that's why you have the link to this course. You'll also be asked to answer a post-survey at the end of the program. It'll be very similar to the one you answered to begin the program, with a couple additional program questions that you can kind of rate the program and give us any feedback that you may have. We also ask that you complete each post-class assessment. So at the end of each of our classes, there'll be a little QR code that you can scan and go out and answer. It's about a 4 to 5 question assessment. We're really just using that to gauge attendance, so we can't really track who comes in and out of Zoom, as well as you'll have an opportunity, if you miss any of the classes live, you'll have an opportunity to watch them on demand. So each class will be recorded and available for you offline. So if you cannot make a session live, you will have the opportunity to watch it on demand. Again, just please make sure to answer that post-class assessment after each one. That way you get credit for your attendance. All the classes will be held on Thursdays at noon. And another program requirement, we'll go over this in the third class, so you don't have to really worry about it right now, is just keep an updated daily gratitude journal. But what I want you to do in that meantime, before the third class, is find something to use for a gratitude journal. It can be an old notebook that you have. It can be, there's apps out there. There's free apps. There's a daily gratitude journal app that is free that you can use. That's really, you're just going to use something that you can write down things that you're grateful for. And we'll go over the parameters in the third class. But you will not be asked to turn this in. And the idea here is to just be as honest and open as possible with yourself. And if you complete all those requirements above, for our JAX folks, you will receive 100 points towards your wellness credit if you complete all these tasks. For our folks in Gainesville and Central Florida, Gainesville especially, this can be rewardable for your wellness incentive. You just want to check with your wellness office to see how to go about doing that, depending on what each one may require you to do. But on the other thing, if you did not receive the pre-test survey, it was just a survey. So you just entered your name, your badge number, you answered some general questions about stress and things like that. If you did not receive it, you can send us an email at wellness@jax.ufl.edu, and we'll make sure to get that to you. But you probably have already done it if you got a registration link or you got the Zoom link for this class. So that was pretty much just your registration, your initial registration. All right, but what I want to do right now is I want to have you close your eyes and I want you to think about your morning. So this morning, when you woke up, what was the very first thing that you did? You grab your phone, maybe scroll through social media. You get up, use the restroom, brush your teeth. What was the very, very first thing that you did this morning? What time did you wake up? And how about when you brush your teeth? Did you were you mindful of how it felt after you brushed your teeth? What conversations did you have this morning? Was it with loved ones? Was it with the kids trying to get them out the door? Did you have any conversations this morning? What about breakfast? What did you have for breakfast? Or that morning coffee? What did it taste like? Did you take time to savor each bite? And if you had coffee, did you put cream and sugar? And if so, were you cognizant of how much you used? Or were you just kind of pouring it in, rushing out the door, making sure you had your caffeine fix for the day? Or how about what sounds did you notice before you left for work? Did you hear any birds chirping, maybe dogs barking, your neighbors, cars, construction? What sounds did you notice before you left for work? Or how about your drive to work? Do you remember what you listened to on the radio? Whether it be a podcast, an audiobook, music, the news, or any other cars on the road. Did you notice anything about the cars on the road? Or here's an easy one. Did you put on your seatbelt before you left? Now, a lot of you are probably saying, I put on my seatbelt, and I hope that you do every time you get in the car. But do you actively remember putting it on? A lot of us rush out of the door, get in the car. We already think we have a million things we got to do when we get to work, and we're driving from point A to point B and not really understanding or knowing how we got there. Right? We can probably recall these things, but not in great detail. We can't recall how it made us feel. We can't recall the sensations we felt as we heard things or felt things or tasted things because we're always in a rush, right? We're always thinking the next stop. What's the next thing that we have to do? And a lot of times our minds tend to wander. And so what mind wandering is technically defined as is it occurs when an individual's thoughts shift away from their task at hand. So you'll hear this commonly referred to many, many different things, but things like spacing out, zoning out, daydreaming, unconscious thought, task unrelated thought. So you'll hear a lot of these terms used interchangeably. And mind wandering is almost natural for us, right? There's almost no way for us not to mind wander, right? We're constantly thinking about the next thing. We're thinking our minds wander a ton. So think about it. Have you ever, like I said, driven to work or school and thought about what you needed to do today, except instead of paying attention to the entire trip? So maybe you're thinking about, I have all these tasks I have to do at work. And you're really driving from point A to point B, not really, it's almost out of habit or second nature that you're getting there, but you're actually not paying full attention to the road. Or how about this? I've been guilty of this. If you're a reader and you're reading pages in the book, and you may get 2 pages down, and you just read it, but your mind went somewhere else and you have no idea what you just read. You can't retain any of that information. Your mind was reading it, but you're also thinking something else. Or how about zoned out when someone was speaking to you, and you weren't engaged in that conversation? Or maybe you're already formulating your response to what they were saying without actually retaining what they were trying to tell you. Or how about laid awake at night when your mind races from thought to thought and you can't sleep because you're just stirring? You're really racing from these negative thoughts. You're thinking about past mistakes that may have happened or worries or angst you may have about the future. We probably have done at least one of these things. When we talk about mind wandering, research really varies on the topic, but what we find out is that our mind races or wanders about a third to half of the time that we're awake. So 33 to 50% of the time that our waking hours, our mind is doing things unrelated to the task at hand. That's a bulk of our time right there, not at hand. So some research shows that, when our mind wanders, they tend to wander to negative thoughts. So you'll hear me use the term rumination a lot. And that's really the stirring in our head where we go over negative thoughts over and over and over again in our head. A lot of times this is when we have quiet time or we're alone, like when we're trying to sleep. We just stir in our negative emotions. Other research shows that mind wandering actually can be a positive thing, right? And also known as unguided thought. So I talk about the positive side of mind wandering. You'll see on your screen a UC Berkeley study where they took 39 adults, had them perform simple remedial tasks on the computer. And when I say simple, it's things like just clicking an X or dragging and dropping something into a box. And when they were doing that, their brain activity was studied. And at the end, they asked each participant after each sequence, to describe their patterns of thought. Either it was task related, freely moving, deliberately constrained, or automatically constrained. And what the researchers found was that there were actually increased alpha waves that were detected in the frontal cortex for those that were expressing freely moving thoughts. And why is that important? Well, that helps us promote relaxation and exploration. So one of the researchers said having a free association thought process that randomly generates memories and imaginative experiences can lead you to new ideas and insights. So it can actually help with our creativity and our imagination. So mind wandering, you already saw it's about a third to half of our waking hours is spent, thinking things that are unrelated to the task at hand. So it's almost second nature that our mind does wander. So it's good to know that there is a positive side of it. The downside of wandering comes when our brain starts to really go towards those negative thoughts. And that's when it can have a negative impact on our health. So remember, that's what is known as rumination. So it takes place when we overthink, overanalyze our past mistakes or negative occurrences. And the problem becomes is this type of thinking where we always are stewing in our negative experiences or stewing in our negative thoughts or negative self-doubt that we give ourselves, that can lead to self-blame. That is a predictor of anxiety and depression. And so we are able to control our thoughts and our emotions, and you'll see that throughout this course. So we have to change the way that we talk to ourselves. Less negative talk, less talking down to ourselves. And to help with that rumination is mindfulness, right? And mindfulness is really about being aware of the present moment and living in the here and now. Now, there's a lot of definitions of mindfulness out there. The one I find that's most comprehensive is from mindful.org, and they define mindfulness as the basic human ability to be fully present, aware of where we are and what we're doing, and not overly reactive or overwhelmed by what's going on around us. And the reason I like this definition the most is the latter part of it. It's not being overly reactive or overwhelmed by what's going on around us. While, yes, you are fully present, you're aware of all your senses, you understand how it makes you feel, you're not overly reactive or you're not becoming overwhelmed by those sensations, right? Think about times, let's say you're just getting into work, you're rushing in on a Monday morning, you have a ton of things in your hand, you're just trying to get to your desk, and before you can even set things down, someone's already asking you to do something. You probably have a little bit of a short fuse. It's one of those things where, can I just please set my things down before you ask me a question of something to do? Like, I haven't even had time to take a breath. So as we practice mindfulness, we're able to handle these interactions a little bit better. We're able to not become overly reactive in a situation. When we look at the research behind mindfulness, in 2010, Hoffman et al. Conducted a meta-analysis of 39 studies that explored the use of mindfulness-based stress reduction and mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. And those findings are consistent with evidence that mindfulness increases positive affect and decreases anxiety and negative effects. So in one study, participants were randomly assigned to an 8-week mindfulness-based stress reduction group, and then were compared with controls on self-reported measures of depression, anxiety, and psychopathology, and on neuroreactivity after watching some sad films. And what the researchers found is that the participants who experienced that mindfulness-based stress reduction had significantly less anxiety, they had less depression, and less somatic distress compared to those of the control group. Now, when we talk about mindfulness, and remember, when we talk about rumination and those negative thoughts, that's when we're just stirring over. So people who experience less rumination is tend to also not ruminate over things as they practice mindfulness. So it actually reduces our ability to ruminate, right? So we're not stirring over our negative thoughts. We talk to ourselves more positively. It also helps improve our memory. So when I asked you to recall your morning this morning, you probably, like I said, could recall it in some detail, but probably not to the detail that you would like. So a 2010 study by Jha et al. Documented these benefits of mindful meditation. And they looked at a military group who participated in an 8-week mindfulness training and compared those to a non-meditating military group and a group of non-meditating civilians. And this study took place during a high-stress environment. So these soldiers were just about to be deployed. This was right before deployment. And what the researchers found is that those of the non-meditating military group had a decreased working memory capacity over time. However, within the meditating military group, those who participated in that 8-week training, they had a working memory capacity that increased with their meditation practice. So we're able to actually improve our memory through mindfulness as well. Now, focus, obviously, you would think that goes hand in hand with mindfulness. It's about focusing our attention, being fully aware in the present moment. So those who practice mindfulness have better focus, are more attentive in their work. They have stronger cognitive flexibility than before mindfulness was a core concept in their life. And finally, another benefit from mindfulness is that it leads to less overreaction. The study shows that those who practice mindfulness can be less prone to overreact or immediately react in an over-emotional way to conflict, right? It's not having that short fuse in those situations. That mindfulness practice can help us accept, understand, and process emotional engagements in a more productive manner. When we look at sorry about that, guys. Give me one second here. When we look at a mindfulness study with healthcare professionals, the one on your screen here, 30 primary care clinicians were studied in this, and they applied mindfulness techniques and trainings. What they found is they had checkpoints at 1 day, 8 weeks, and 9 months. And at the end of the study, clinicians expressed decreased emotional exhaustion, decreased stress, anxiety, and depression, and decreased depersonalization, or this feeling of being alienated, like you're going through things alone. You have no one to talk to about this. No one understands what you're going through. So just even 9 months after this, they had checkpoints, and these clinicians still reported better measures from just mindfulness techniques and trainings. And the idea here is we want to handle our stress, right? We want to get a good grasp on our stress. Stress is ever present. It's not going away in our lives. There's not anyone you can find in this life that doesn't face some type of stressors. We all live with it. It's how we really handle that stress that comes into play. So remember, stress is a physical, mental, or emotional factor that can cause us bodily or mental tension, right? Stressors can be external or internal. So when we talk about external stressors, those are things that are less likely for us to control. These are major life changes, such as death of a loved one, a divorce, military deployment, maybe a career that requires you to be away from home for a long period of time. When we talk about our stressors that are internal, this comes from our stress-inducing thoughts and behaviors. So these can come from our mindset or expectations that we may have. So examples of this could be fear of public speaking. Maybe we feel like we don't have that, that belief in ourselves that we're not going to embarrass ourselves when we talk publicly. That negative self-talk that we give ourselves if we're always down on ourselves, thinking we can't do something or we don't deserve to be happy. Unrealistic expectations we may set for ourselves or for others. This need to always be perfect when no one's perfect. That all or nothing attitude, my way or the highway, that rigid thinking. All these things can cause us internal stress. That's our internal stressors. Those are things that we can control. Those are stress-inducing thoughts and behaviors that we can control. Right? And while stress and anxiety are often used, you'll hear it used interchangeably. They don't mean the same thing. So stress usually can be linked back to a certain event or a certain stressor, those external or internal stresses we talked about. While anxiety can persist even without a stressor present. So you don't have to have a certain event or a certain stressor present in your life to feel anxious, right? So when we're talking about our stress, talking about our anxiety, they're often used interchangeably, but they do mean two different things. And also, I want to let you know that stress varies from person to person. So the example I like to use here, that is me on a roller coaster. That little kid in the front row. They are not exciting to me. It is scary. I'm stressed. My palms are sweaty right now just talking about it. My friends, all having fun on a roller coaster. I'm holding on for dear life. Not so we get stressed out sometimes when we think, well, I'm stressed out about something that someone else isn't. And then you start getting that negative self talk. But it's okay. Stress varies from person to person. So what may be stressful to you may be thrilling to another, and vice versa. And the physical impact of stress. So when you're in a stress state, your body produces this surge of hormones. So these hormones will temporarily increase your blood pressure, and it causes your heart to beat faster and your blood vessels to narrow. And when we talk about stress, we'll hear acute versus chronic. So acute, imagine a bear charges into your office right now or where you're sitting right now. That's a stressful event. That your response to that terrifying or traumatic event is going to initiate the fight, flight, or freeze response. So your sympathetic nervous system kicks into gear and it provides your body with that burst of energy so that it can respond accordingly. But remember, this is acute stress. So once that event is over, your body is able to return back to normal. The problem with stress comes when we have chronic stress. And these are circumstances that are ongoing or happen on a recurring basis. Your body doesn't ever have time or doesn't ever fully recover. And those stress hormones are just marinating in your body. And it becomes an issue because you have those short, rapid breaths. So your body has that good fuel. But you also, if you have respiratory issues, such as asthma or anything like that, that can further exacerbate those issues. Causes cardiovascular issues because you have stronger contractions of the heart muscle. So that leads to an increased risk of stroke and heart disease. We definitely know the downside of chronic stress. So we want to look at some mindfulness techniques that we can use to combat some of those chronic stresses. So John Kabat-Zinn talks about mindfulness and how easy it is. And it's one of my favorite tools because you don't need a gym membership to practice mindfulness. You don't need any special equipment. You don't need to pay any monthly fee to practice mindfulness. Mindfulness is within our power. And John Kabat-Zinn says the best way to capture moments is to pay attention. This is how we cultivate mindfulness. A useful tool is when you're talking with someone and engaging in a conversation. In your mind, you want to be able to repeat what they said. Give a summary of what they said back to them. So if you're not able to do that, you're either preparing your response or you're thinking somewhere else. You're not thinking, you're not fully engaging in that moment. So one mindful technique is mindful movement. So just be present throughout each moment of the day. You know, it's paying attention to your surroundings. Like I said, did you notice any sounds before you went to work? Taking time out of the day just to be fully present and fully aware without any distractions. You know, a lot of us are uncomfortable when we have quiet time. We always bring out our phone. Not that there's anything that we need to look to on social media or, you know, through the news app or anything like that. It's just, you know, it's a little uncomfortable for us to be quiet and and really recognize everything that's going on around us. So ditch those distractions, you know, the cell phones, that angst about the future and past, the stress that comes from being in the workplace or at home. Ditch those just for a little bit. That can help lower your stress and anxiety. Some example of those mindful movements, just mindful walking. If you ever go out for a walk, especially in nature, you can bring your phone for safety, you know, all that, but keep it in your pocket. Just notice the sounds around you. Notice how it smells, how you feel when you're walking. Things like yoga and Tai Chi, perfect example of exercises that you can use mindfulness in. Being mindful of your body and your movements. Anything that you can do throughout the day, you can be mindful in doing. Even sending emails. You can be mindful and present in that moment. How do your fingers feel on the keyboard as you're typing? What is the message you want to get across? How are you feeling as you're typing that message? Mindfulness is within our power. Remember, we're just being fully present, fully aware, and not being overly reactive. This is a body scan is a great technique you can use when you're trying and you're struggling to fall asleep at night. So I like to use it if you ever struggle to fall asleep, especially if you're ruminating, right? If you're getting into your head too much. That helps us reduce our stress and tension. It aids in improving sleep. It also helps bring attention to body parts or things, parts of our body that may be causing us tension or pain that we've been ignoring or neglecting. So to practice body scan, you just lie down in a comfortable position. Like I said, I like to do it right before bed. Close your eyes, focus on the top of your head while you're calmly breathing. You don't want those short, quick stress breaths, right? You don't want them right up in your chest. You want it that deep belly breath, right? So you're going to just focus on the top of your head while you calmly breathe. Pay attention to any feelings or tension at the top of your head. And what you're doing is mentally scanning each part of your body as you work your way downward. And if you do feel any tension in any part of your body, you just visualize that tension leaving your body. And oftentimes you'll hear this, don't worry if your mind starts to wander. Remember, it's natural. But what you can do is just gently remind yourself of the practice that you're doing at hand while you're doing it and bring your attention back to your body and your breath. Like your mind's going to wander. It helps with practice. As you practice more, you'll see it wanders less. And then as you practice mindfulness more, you're going to ruminate less as well. So that brings us to mindful meditation. And this is a type of meditation in which you focus on being intensely aware of what you're sensing and feeling in the moment without interpretation or judgment. Right? You hear meditation, and a lot of people say they just can't do it. It's not for them. And it may not be for everyone. But taking a deep breath and coming to your senses and just feeling those deep breaths and taking a minute for yourself just to calm down is for everyone. You can do that at any point. Again, you don't need any special equipment to do something like that. So the benefits of meditation, again, reduce rumination. Not thinking those negative thoughts over and over and over. Have reduced stress, better memory, boosted that memory, increased focus, especially on if you're meditating on a certain event, if you're trying to recall things. You have decreased emotional reactivity and increased relationship satisfaction. And oftentimes when people say they just can't get the meditation down, you'll hear one of these mistakes. And when I was getting my meditation certification, the one I heard the most often, or what it began with, was trying too hard. Right? They had a set goal in mind, and you try too hard. At the end of this meditation, I want to feel X, Y, and Z. And you try so hard to feel that certain way that it's counterproductive to what you set out doing. Right? Just take some deep breaths, close your eyes, don't have any set goal in mind. And if distractions come, simply bring your mind back to center. Come up with a short phrase or mantra or word that you can keep ingrained visually in the center of your mind. And anytime you start thinking about, what you're going to eat for dinner, all this work you have to do, just simply remind yourself of that word or short phrase and bring your attention back to the body. Because ultimately, if you listen to those distractions, if you try too hard, if you have this set goal in mind, you become frustrated, and over time you just give up. And that's not what we want to do. There's a lot of free apps out there that you can use for meditation that has guided meditations out there. We also have recorded numerous ones here in the office, and I give them regularly on our Wellness TV talks that you can find on the Gator Care website. These are, by all means, not all of the meditation apps. There's tons of them out there. What I say is just find one that works for you. And if you find one that works for you, stick with it. Regular practice, you'll start to reap the benefits of meditation. And the idea here is that we want to build resiliency. So with our meditation, with our mindfulness, with our stress management, and really tackling these internal stressors in our life, we want to build resiliency. And that's the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant sources of stress. Right? And a lot of times people hear about resilient people, and they think, man, they don't have to face the same things I do. But they do. Resilient people still face adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, stress, all those things. But they look at ways they can adapt to it, how they can use that as learning tools and use them as positive stepping stones to something greater. So instead of seeing as a source of stress or something that comes in as a roadblock and give up, they look at it as a learning tool. How can I turn this into something positive? And that's ultimately what we want to do when we build our resiliency. When we look at, really building that resiliency in the 6 domains of resilience, we'll definitely talk more about resiliency in the final class, but we'll go over the 6 domains right now, just briefly overview. And when we look at the green box there, the vision, that refers to our goals and purpose that we have in life. So it's about staying focused even when times get tough, making sure that we do not get lost or distracted from what we're ultimately trying to achieve. So, like I said, when we go over this in the third class or the final class, you'll understand how this all comes together. Composure is exactly what it sounds like. So remember when we discussed that fight, flight, or freeze response that the stress activates in our body? Building that composure helps us reduce the effects of that fight or flight and freeze response. So instead of panicking or having anxiety over things or having our emotions control us, we're able to help regulate them and be in control of our responses and our emotions. Reasoning is our ability to problem solve, be resourceful, plan ahead for different roadblocks that we may face in our goal. So remember, it's not getting bogged down by those roadblocks. Health is pretty straightforward as well. How can we be resilient if we don't take care of ourselves? Like I said, you've had someone ask you, to do something first thing in the morning. Maybe it was after you didn't sleep well. You just have that shorter fuse. You get irritated quicker. So taking care of yourself with proper nutrition, exercise, and sleep hygiene is crucial for that resiliency building. Tenacity, that's that bounce back quality that I mentioned. So not getting bogged down by that roadblock. It's about not giving up in the face of adversity and setting attainable goals for ourselves. So remember, those unattainable goals, those lofty expectations that we set for ourselves or for others, that can be significant sources of our own stress that we cause ourselves. And finally, that collaboration, it's about finding those support systems in our life. It's about managing your social interactions and your professional interactions in the proper manner. But most importantly, it's about accepting that support that others give us and giving it to others, right? You have to be okay allowing to accept support from other people. It's not feeling alienated in those situations. And the idea here is that we know what resiliency is and it sounds good, but the reason it's important is it's what gives people the psychological strength to cope with stress. So resilient people are able to bounce back from adversity, use it as building blocks to build those positive changes in their lives. Talked about the physical and emotional impact that stress can have on our bodies. So building that resiliency, becoming more resilient, that can help with managing our stress. And I'm gonna this quote just really sticks with me because it's from one of my favorite authors, my philosopher, excuse me. And he says, no amount of anxiety makes any difference to anything that is going to happen. No amount of anxiety makes any difference to anything that is going to happen. So we can talk, we can say, we can ruminate on all these different things. We can think of the worst possible case scenario, but is it going to make any difference to anything that is going to happen? All we're doing is hurting ourselves by getting mired down in those negative thoughts. So a practice I want you to take with you is practice bringing awareness to the quality of your breath a few times per day, right? Just start by giving your awareness to your breath a minute before each meal. So if you can get a minute before each meal throughout your day, just take a moment, take a deep breath. A lot of times we just scarf down our food. We don't even put our fork down in between bites. And you'll hear John talk about mindful eating in the food, mood, and mental health component of this course. But just take a moment, take a deep breath before each meal that you have. Get in tune with your body and see how you feel. Recognize your emotions. And looking ahead, class 2 will be next week, and Karan will be discussing what makes us happy. That'll take place again a week from today at noon. Don't forget to find something to use for your gratitude journal. There are apps out there. Like I said, I'm not going to ask you to turn it in. It's just going to be something that you're going to use to write down things that you're grateful for throughout the day. We'll go over the parameters of that in the third class, so you don't have to do anything right now. Just make sure you secure something that you can use for your gratitude journal. Also, you will receive a copy of this presentation as well as a link to the recording, as well as a link to the assessment. So there will be a QR code on the next slide where you can answer your post-class assessment. But in case that you don't have time to answer it right now, or you don't have a camera phone where you can use that QR code, there will be a link sent out in an email after this class is uploaded and the recording is available for you to use. So I'll hang around if there are any questions, but you can answer this post-class assessment just by using your phone, scanning that QR code and following the link, and you should be able to answer the post-class assessment. Remember that you have to answer that to make sure that we got your attendance, that we know that you attended, so you can get credit for it. But if not, you can wait for that email to come out, and we'll definitely supply a link as well. So I thank you all for joining me today, and I hope you got a little bit out of this, and we look forward to seeing you the rest of the course.